There is so much blood. She can taste it in the air. Over the scent of rain or soil or dust, there is the unmistakable, pungent tang of blood. She can't tell who it belongs to anymore. Innocents, corpses, both, neither. Maybe it's the earth's blood, seeping out of cuts in the ground to mingle with the dead. Her own blood rushes through her veins in sharp pulses with each frantic beat of her heart. She can't join the dead yet. She won't. Not until she reaches her destination. Not much longer now, she whispers to him. Of course he doesn't answer, but she imagines his voice anyway, calm and gentle. He always was gentle, not Matilda. There was a fire that burned somewhere in the pit of her stomach, fueling her, making her angry, making her strong. Not much longer now, she murmured through chapped lips. Not much longer now. Not much longer now. Hey nerds, and welcome to another video. Today we are illustrating Matilda, a character that we designed in the last video that I uploaded. If you want to check that out, it was pretty fun. If you want to know how I came up with the idea or a little more about her, please feel free to check that out. I'll put that up here in the corner. Now, when I'm starting an illustration, I always try to be very loose with the pencil. It's never a good idea to get too attached to any part of your illustration. That's something that I learned over the course of many years just practicing and going to classes. The more attached you are to the picture that you're creating, the more attached you are to those lines that you're putting down, the harder it is to actually improve the illustration by modifying it. So I always try to be pretty loose and free-flowing and not too attached to what I've already put down so that I can make improvements to the sketch. The pen I'm using here is a Pentel .3 pen that I actually got for Christmas from my brother. I usually use Micron, but sometimes they just feel a little bit... They grab the paper more than I would like. I don't really know what to call that, but this pen just feels a little smoother. I like how thin it is, and I thought that it would be a good fit for this illustration since I could make some of those sort of hatching lines, keep it kind of almost messy. I did do thumbnails for this illustration as well on a different page of my sketchbook, which I'll actually be walking us through for the next video. I just finished it, I think, yesterday, so I'm really excited to show that to you guys. You may have noticed earlier I did use a reference for the machete. References are really handy. I don't really understand why people think that they're not good to use. I never trace, but I do look at references just to understand what something looks like. I have not drawn a machete, so even though I knew I wanted to give her one, I didn't know exactly the shape that it should be. The first drawing I did kind of just looked like a big knife, which is what a machete is, but not quite. Now comes the fun part, which is coloring with the marker set that I have. I use an 80 color marker set of Ohu, which are basically the cheap end of alcohol-based markers. If you don't know what alcohol-based markers are, they are the cousins of water-based markers, but they're more commonly used for illustrations because they don't, they do smudge. They don't leave streaks like water-based markers do. I do have a flesh tone set of Copic markers, which are the high-end brand of alcohol-based markers. Copics are amazing because they can blend into each other really well. The pigments are wonderful. They also have what is called a brush tip on one end of the pen, which is a lot easier for getting those details that you want, the finer details of working with marker. I adore the 6 Copic markers that I have, the only ones I can afford. But I do hope in the future to be able to save up for one of the actual color sets. We will see. I am not a rich person, so it will probably take a while, but you can bet that when I do get those, I will immediately be drawing with them, and I will be showing you guys what those look like to use for a full illustration. I already have so much fun with them just drawing skin tones, so I'm really looking forward to having some more in my repertoire. But besides that, the Ohu markers are a great fit for a beginner with alcohol markers. I really wanted to give alcohol markers a try because as an illustrator, as an artist, I studied 2D animation, and 2D animation is a very quick process. It's not exactly an illustrative process. You're meant to put things down quickly, you're meant to have a lot of expression, and that was always up my alley. I am not very good at illustrating because I'm impatient. Alcohol-based markers brought me back to illustrating because they go down so vibrantly, and there is the option to blend with them if you have the right tools, and they just look so nice, and they add color adds so much to any picture, and it just wasn't something I was utilizing traditionally because drawing digitally was so much easier. I actually drew digitally for over a year and a half. I didn't draw very much traditionally because why would you draw in a sketchbook when you can draw digitally and have an undo button like we all wish was a thing in real life? But alcohol-based markers really brought me back to wanting to create pieces that I could hold in my hand. There's something really special about just having an illustration be between you and the paper and whatever medium you're using. There's just nothing quite like having those tools on hand, making the marks on the paper yourself. And I'll actually have to show you guys at some point. I have a lot of traditional art from back when I was a wee lassie. So I drew on printer paper and with mechanical pencil and in class, on my notes, everywhere. And I actually kept everything from about senior year of high school up until now. There is a story behind that. I keep like every tiny scrap of anything I ever draw on, but that is for another day. I do have, I think, 6 or 7 3-inch binders chock full of just art. I'll have to show you guys at some point. Like, it's pretty impressive to have that much on hand. At any time someone tells me, "Oh, you're only good because you're talented," I just want to smack them with my 7 binders of hard work. It's a lot. I draw a lot. This marker was a little dry. You can see me struggling to get the ink down on the paper. It took 3 or 4 times to get the ink in there. That is the one downside to the Ohu markers. Once you run out of a color, they don't have individual replacements. So either you just do without or you have to buy a whole new set, which is not really recommended. I mean, you don't want to purchase another $40 of markers if you just need one gray marker. But all in all, the Ohu markers are fantastic for someone who is looking to give it a shot. I got 80 markers for like $40 US, and comparatively to Copics, which I have 6, and they cost $50, it's definitely like, it's a good way to try the medium without just breaking your bank. So I do recommend them, even with their cons. They are a really good start out to alcohol-based markers. The only other issue I have with the Ohu markers is that they don't have a brush tip. They have a chisel tip and they have a bullet nib, which is smaller. You can get into smaller spaces, but it's just thick enough that getting into corners is really difficult. So that is one downside to them. this was pretty fun. I realized that she really just looked way too clean for someone walking through a zombie apocalypse. It was like she had gone to the mall and gotten a zombie apocalypse starter kit, and it just wasn't working for me. So since I did have my flesh tones on hand, I grabbed some of the browner tones and just kind of roughed up her outfit a bit to make it look more worn, more like she has been walking through mud and struggling through brush, that sort of thing. And it worked pretty well. I was afraid that the Ohu marker underneath might stain my Copics, but they actually held up really well. So I was really happy with how that turned out. Except for this. My Copic marker decided to just plop a big brown blob onto the shoe, and I tried to save it with drawing like some mud-ish stuff around her feet, but that wasn't originally the plan. But what can you do? Sometimes mediums don't like you and they create problems and you just gotta deal with it. Just like she's dealing with this zombie apocalypse. You go, girl. Here's a tool that I have been using really since I discovered they existed, which I have no idea how I've lived for 25 years and have never heard of a white gel pen, but they are fantastic. I like using them for separating darker tones, trying to make things pop a little bit more. Love using them for hair shines, that sort of thing, and for highlights in the eyes. They're a really fun tool. Highly recommend. If you've never used one, use one. They're fun. So that's how she turned out. I had lots of fun redrawing her. It was nice to sort of pin her design down. It's fun for me to draw a character in an illustration after scribbling them on a piece of paper. But there she is. I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye, nerds.